generation intelligentsia and second generation intelligentsia. So first generation intelligentsia are those people who are products of social mobility. Their fathers or mothers, usually fathers are important, mothers should be different, but their fathers and especially grandfathers were not intellectuals. They were manual workers, they were peasants, they were soldiers, I don't know one, but they were not, but they were sent somehow to the university, and so they became fresh intellectuals. Naturally, all of us will remember that the communist regimes, all sorts of regimes in Soviet Union, in Central, in Eastern Central Europe, in the GDR, they tried to create their own intelligentsia. They were trying to create a new intelligentsia, and even they believed that their social mission is the creation of a new intelligentsia. In many aspects, the Soviet type regimes were very efficient, and they were creating that intelligentsia, really fresh blood, original ideas, people coming from those social strata which were isolated from moving up, etc. And you had naturally the old intelligentsia, whose mothers and fathers, especially again fathers or even grandfathers, were from professions, from trained strata, from university education. So practically, you had and it's not topic of the class in the morning. You had a very interesting, complicated, partly natural fight between old and new intelligentsia in the communist time, and partly an artificial fight which was generated by the political elite between them. But after 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and in the Soviet Union these regimes had at least 2-3 generations, but even in Eastern Europe and East Germany they had 2 generations, so that problem more or less was, not so totally solved, but it was not a primary importance. But then after 89, a very interesting phenomenon emerged, that naturally, in the new intelligentsia, in this communist created intelligentsia, naturally it was a big strata, you had all sorts of people, all sorts of reactions, etc. But it came out that the importance of the university training for their kids was different in this new intelligentsia than in the old intelligentsia. Very often the old intelligentsia, so this second, third generation families of professionals, intellectuals, was sending their kids, their daughter, not only daughters but also their sons to the universities in the 90s, at least in Central Europe and in the big Russian cities. So it was totally clear that to have a university training, and especially university training in areas like humanities, was not a very attractive one. You could not make money with that. You hadn't have nice perspectives to find a good job. So from a pragmatic point of view, and even maybe from the point of view of the efficiency of the national economy of these countries in the 90s, it was not so efficient to be a humanitarian, a historian, a sociologist, a man or a woman of letters. It was much nicer to go to law schools, to engineering schools, to business schools. And by the way, we see that those schools were everywhere the most popular schools. From the point of their attractiveness and I don't know what. And in cases when they had fees, the fees were higher than the fees of other institutions or other faculties. But the old intelligentsia was sending their sons and daughters further to the traditional places, art schools, humanities, etc. So for them it was not important that the social prestige of that profession at this moment is not very high. For them it was not interesting what sort of short-term job perspectives these young men and women had. For them it was much more interesting to continue a tradition to be, I mean, there is a beautiful German word for that. I mean, beautiful for me, maybe not beautiful for a German, but it's, and you don't have anything similar in Russian or in English. In German, you call it Bildungsbürger. It means you are a citoyen because you are trained, you are educated. So your Bürgertum, your status as a Bürger is created not via your private property and not by your job, but by your training. It's a 19th century German concept. And I feel that concept beautiful in the 90s of the post-communism, because, I mean, in the modern capitalist societies, the Bildungsbürger and the other sorts of capitalists, or at least sub-elites to capitalists, are mixed. But in the 90s, in the post-Soviet type societies, this Bildungsbürger became separated from the other Bürger. So the other Bürger were doing money, and they were thinking about tradition, continuation, education, values, which was not a business-like behavior in a society where business was important. So you were speaking a lot about, market, and you have an important social strata, a sort of cultural elite, if you want, who tries to ignore market. They are not against the market as an economic concept, but they don't want they don't want their lives used just in that sense of those markets. And here, social stratification and cultural stratification are becoming different. And it's quite interesting because, I don't know, are you familiar with the concept of the social capital by Bourdieu? I mean, some yes, some no. Okay, I'm again simplifying the story for a very basic understanding. According to Bourdieu, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm offering it in a very primitive way. I mean, in reality, it's much more complex, and in that collection of texts, what I gave to you, there are Bourdieu texts. So Bourdieu is speaking about that a man, that's an individual theory. It's not a theory on the social level. It's a theory on the individual level. It speaks about that each man or woman, so each individual, has different sort of assets, if you want, different sorts of capitals. And practically, your life strategy is constructed in that way that you are translating those capitals, those assets, I'm just telling what sort of assets, from one form into the other. And if I may simplify, the story again, Bourdieu is speaking about some sorts of capitals, assets. You have naturally physical capital. You rich or poor. You have money or you don't have money. You have property, you don't have property. It's very simple. Then you have cultural capital. Cultural capital, it's not only your formal training. Here, for example, I know from my discussions here in Georgia how important it is here to have a Western degree. So you have a Western degree, you have better chances to be taken to a job in the business. And it's not so easy if you have a local degree. Again, but this is not only the degree. Cultural capital is the habit, the manner, the style how you're speaking. I don't know, many of you, the professors, of course, you take part in oral examinations and entrance examinations, by students. And you have that, as the Russian calls собеседование, and naturally, if you have somebody who is maybe you have two students, or would-be students, and they are equally good or equally bad, but one is coming from a poor family somewhere in the countryside, and